Like I mentioned earlier, we always make it a priority so that we share testimonies for all who are possibly going to come on the deacon board. And so this morning you will hear from two, and to begin you will hear from Hilda Rudolph.
There's a lot of things in my life I never thought I'd do or say, and I've done them. I've served in just about every church that we've ever been at, and with Bryant being in campus ministry, we moved quite a bit, and I always found a place to serve. Being a deacon is just a fun way of caring for the church family. We've never lived in a city where we had family around, so our church became family in a lot more ways than you'll ever realize. I've been involved in the church since I was on the cradle roll. Thought that's just the way everybody lived until I lost my mom. And at 15, that was more than devastating. And at that point, I was mad at God, really mad at God. It took me a long time to look at God face to face and have a conversation with him. But what I had missed all those years from cradle roll on was that personal relationship with Christ. I never had it. So when I needed it, it wasn't there. And it was through counseling of a very dear friend who was actually one of the pastors that married Bryant and I came to understand that he was not there, and he wasn't going to be there until I accepted him as my personal Savior. And that was at age 19. I served as a deacon in my 20s. I've served on, like I said, just about every committee there is. And I love being a deacon the most because I can be a caregiver. And that is who I am. I'm a mother, I'm a friend, I'm a nurse, which you know is a really good caregiver. Sometimes too much. I'm a wife, and that is who I am in personhood. And I love this church. We came here because we heard they have a really good pastor. And we decided that we would follow them up to Maryland and pray that this is where they stay forever and ever. I would be delighted to serve as your deacon, and let me just tell you, you are one of the most delightful, loving, caring group of people that we have ever faced in a church, and I would be so thankful to serve for you. Thank you.
She says she came because of the pastor, but we know it's the pastor's wife. Yeah. So, I was going to make a joke, but I'm not going to make a joke. So next, I would invite you to listen to Doug Pennington.
Who also came for your wife.
She handled it for me.
Well, good morning and God bless everyone. For those of you who already know me, you know me, I'm a bit of an odd duck. My testimony follows suit. I grew up in my dad was an agnostic Catholic, my mother a non-practicing Lutheran, and I was essentially Jewish. You can't really get much stranger than that. Essentially what it came down to was, since I can remember, literally as early as my first memories, I believed wholeheartedly, with great passion, in the God of Isaac and Abraham and Jacob. Without a doubt, I believed in the laws that God had created. I believed in his universe. Of course, the biggest problem, which many of you probably have already figured out, is that's really cool unless you'd have, it sounds fantastic, but I was missing something. No personal relationship with Jesus Christ. My parents didn't really talk about Jesus. We had Bibles all over the house. My parents were very happy that I read a Bible. Of course, they had no idea I wasn't Christian. Of course, they had no idea they weren't Christian. And so it made it really easy for us to be able to have minor, light conversations. When I would ask difficult questions, they would tell me to go read it, because that's what I would do anyway. And what really happened was God worked through friends of mine in college, and they did what any good friend of mine would do, and that's challenge me. I was a legalist in every measure you could think of. For those of you who know me, you probably still think I am. I try not to be. But the simple fact of the matter is, I loved that God was the God of order. I mean, if you read the Old Testament, you will see his order. You will see his discipline. You will see his love through discipline. And that just resonated with me. But when I was challenged to read the Old Testament and compare it to the New, I found these silly things called prophecies. There are 109 of them, by the way, about Jesus. And they're all fulfilled in the New Testament. For a man who believes and loves in order, that was too much for me to overcome. So when you hear about people who come to Christ through the New Testament, that's one thing. I came to Christ through Isaiah. Without Isaiah, I still, to this day, believe I would never have come to Jesus. The Old Testament isn't something we need to forget. It is the foundation of our very faith. It is where God has laid the cornerstone for us understanding his word. So since that time, I have married my lovely and wonderful wife, had 2 wonderful children. I've served as an associate pastor. I've served as a deacon. I don't choose to serve out of my own desire, to be honest. In fact, it scares me to serve because, remember the legalist part? I can say I am partway through a master's in ministry and realized I was doing it mostly because I really liked to learn about it and not because it was helping me serve his kingdom. So I stopped because, again, the focus needs to be on Jesus and about his kingdom, not on me growing and getting really puffed up in the head. So I'm here because God has brought us here. I'm here because, as Hilda said, this is a loving and wonderful church that happens to have a really cool pastor's wife and an okay preacher. And so if you guys choose to call me as a deacon, I will proudly and happily serve you and ask you every day to help make sure I'm not too proud in my serving. Thank you very much.
As you can see, we have some really great people who have been willing to, and Doug, who have been willing to step up, and so you'll hear from one more next week, but we are very excited about all who have agreed to be considered, and I know that you will want to even now be praying for them and praying for us as we are discerning God's will for our deacons for next year.